Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. This is our Hoops HD report, recording live on tape delay here around a little before 9:30 on Monday, December 14th. I'm your host, Chad.
It's live. We are live.
Joined by
On
David
tape
Briggs and Joby Fortson up here on the top row.
See, I messed up, but you can't cut it out because we're live on tape delay.
John Salika, John Titel joining us down in the bottom row, and we've got a lot to get to. And unfortunately, we're not going to be starting tonight on a very happy note at all. Before we even go to games and anything like that, we want to talk about what happened in the Florida State game with Keontae Johnson, Florida's star player, potential SEC player of the year. If you did not watch the video of what happened, I recommend you don't do it because it was one of the most horrible things I've ever seen in my life. Quite honestly, as he was walking out from a timeout, just absolutely collapsed. My understanding is he was taken right from there to the hospital in Tallahassee. He has now been moved to hospital in Gainesville. Right now, my understanding is as well, they had him induced in a coma for a couple of days. I believe that did come out of that tonight, and he is responding to some simple commands. That's the latest update I've heard. But it's one of the scariest situations we've seen in college basketball in a long, long time. I mean, going back to Hank Gathers, that long of a time, I think. And we're just praying for him, for his family. I know the team is completely broken up about this. They've already canceled their next game. I just wanted to run through any of you that want to have any thoughts on what happened. I guess, David, let me start with you.
Well, I mean, it was really scary. It was unsettling. I was watching the game, but I had something else on as well. And it happened when they were coming out of a timeout. And when I saw the video of it, it was shocking. Like, it looked a lot like what had happened to Hank Gathers and what you had seen in some other areas. And something that may have gotten missed a little bit was what happened to Michael Ojo, a recent Florida State alum, this past August. He collapsed and died on the court while playing pro ball in Serbia. So this was something that was fresh on the minds of the Florida State players and fans and coaches, as well as the Florida players. And the one thing that you did notice when it happened was how the players on both teams reacted. It was really scary. It was just lights out timber. I don't know what caused it. I don't know if they have said that yet.
They have not. There's been speculation. We are not going to speculate here.
We're not going to do that. But really, you just hope he's okay. I know a lot of people are angry that they didn't stop the game. I am not going to say that they should have kept playing, but I am going to say when you're in a situation like that, that's confusing, that's scary, that you're not normally in, you're not always going to do the right thing. And sometimes there isn't a right or a wrong thing.
David, I can shed a little light on that. From my understanding is that Leonard Hamilton, the head coach of Florida State, talked to Mike White, the head coach of Florida, offered to cancel the rest of the game as soon as it happened. White apparently talked to his players, and they made the decision to keep going. So I don't have a problem there if that's how
I don't either. I don't either. And again, it's nobody's fault. It was just really scary, and like it almost made you. What was the point in even talking about who won after that?
Right. I don't know if the three of you have any thoughts on it. It's just, John, Titel.
I think you guys summed it up very well. I just wanted to point out, keep hearing on the news with COVID about all of the ICU beds in an entire state being full or something. Can you imagine if he went to the local Tallahassee hospital and found out, we don't have any room for him because of COVID? If there's there's no good time to have such a horrible thing happen, but I couldn't think of a worse time than late 2020.
I'll tell you, as somebody who I personally had a little hospital visit a few weeks ago, I mean, our bids are not filled up here, thankfully, where I'm at. But it was not fun being in the hospital for a couple of days, and especially in this time when it was, everybody was practically in those full hazmat suits and everything. But I don't even know if he's allowed to have family in there or not. If he was up here in New Jersey, he would not have even be allowed to have his family in the room. But I think it's a little better than that. Joby, you had a comment also, or?
No,
okay.
We just all wish and give our best to the Gator family.
Uh,
It's and Johnson, Keontae Johnson's family. I think we've said our piece, and I'm in wholehearted agreement with everybody on our prayers going out to.
Absolutely. And I just kind of wanted to, there is some good news going on in the world these days, even when it turns to, when it comes to, problems in the hospitals and everything. We talked about COVID, and obviously everyone who's not been on a rock knows that vaccines are starting to be distributed,
Yes.
thankfully. And we are now being told by the middle of, in the next couple of months here, they're going to get all the frontline personnel vaccinated, and from what I've reading today, it could be by the middle of March or early April that everybody, you, me, everybody here, we're going to be lining up and getting our shots done. And I want to bring up a subject before we get to games also because of that. David, sorry, you had a comment though?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think they're rolling them out as soon as tomorrow. So some of the healthcare
today.
professionals are going to be able to get them. Yeah.
There were people getting them today. Yep.
20 million in this round.
But let me throw this out there in terms of college basketball, because right now they're talking about how do we pull off the NCAA tournament. And obviously college athletes are probably going to be among the final group to get it. These are young kids that are not, for the most part, in any type of high risk category or anything like that. They're going to be down towards the bottom of the list there. But if we can start getting college athletes vaccinated by the middle of March, it's going to take 4 weeks to get the 2 shots, and 3 weeks between shots, and another week afterwards till vaccine takes effect. But by end of April, these kids could all be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Let me ask a couple of you this. Taitel, let me start with you first, then Sleek, I want to ask you as well. Why are we playing the NCAA tournament in the middle of March then? Why aren't we playing it in, let's say end of April, beginning of May? It's a very easy move. Make the move right now.
You say it's an easy move, Chad. I say I don't know if the arenas are spoken for by other teams or events in April and May. Certainly for health reasons, if you can make the players and the fans safe by waiting a month or two, that makes all the sense in the world. I fear, as usual with the NCAA, that it might come down to money in terms of if you have a 30-day delay from March to April, but there's enough vaccine to go around that you can fill those arenas rather than have 0% or 10% capacity, then that might be a deciding factor, because we're talking a ton of tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for a sport that lost that much, if not more, last March.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, and I would say to that comment of, are the arenas available? Well, if we start planning it now, there's a lot better chance they're going to be available than if we make that decision, March 1st. And on top of that, Salika, among other things we can do is if we say we're playing it in May, that gives us time to spread out the rest of the season, because we're going to have so many cancellations, and maybe we can get full conference seasons in.
Well, first of all, let me start with the vaccines, because it's actually going to be, my understanding, a 2-part process where you get the first vaccine and then you get the second shot, I'm going to say within 30 days. And
3 weeks,
3 weeks.
And number 2, there has been talk about relocating the entire tournament to Indianapolis. So you have a whole bunch of venues that are going to be at your disposal. You're going to have Butler University. You're going to have the Farmers Coliseum at IUPUI. There may be limited availability at Spankers Life Fieldhouse, depending on the Pacers. And here's something for the puppet. You could have a curtain for Lucas Oil Stadium.
Well, I think moving it out to May.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, moving it out to May. One of the things is that with the multi-team events that generally, contain anywhere between 3 and 8 teams, all but 1 or 2 of them had to be altered or rescheduled or have the lineup change. The NCAA tournament has 68 teams. It just isn't manageable under the circumstances that we're under now. Now, maybe in March things will be different, but my thing is, why not wait until May? Let everybody get vaccinated. Even if not everybody can get it, teams can go to Indianapolis and isolate and quarantine for a week. Classes will be over, and the chances of being able to play this without having to cancel or postpone games. You can't just cancel an NCAA tournament game. How do you decide what the results of that game are if you have to cancel or postpone it? So I think moving it to May makes sense. I know that it's not ideal. It's not what it normally is. But moving it to May also means you don't have to play the whole thing in Indianapolis. You can play it in 13 and 14 venues like we always do.
Well, there's also one other thing that we haven't discussed either. It's not just the players that are potentially going to be the line for vaccines. It's going to be coaches. It's going to be support staff, medical staff.
Right. But
officials who are traveling around the country might be something you want to think about.
But Sleek, I'm saying here from what I'm hearing is that by the middle of May, maybe even earlier than that, all those people can get the vaccines. There's going to be, a couple 100 million doses available, and there's 300 million people in our country, and we know that there's a good percentage who will refuse to take it. But so there should be enough.
Well, they don't get to come to
the.
No, they don't.
What's going to happen also is the willing and the most aggressive will have access by probably mid-March. You might have to wait in a line, et cetera. When we say that they're at the back of the line because they're healthy and young, but also they have access and desire. That's going to be a driving force once you get beyond those who are in critical, those who are over 65, those who are first line responders, those who are retail, those who are teachers. Once you get beyond those who the government will designate as more in need or more ahead, then it's about, hey, do you have the willingness and desire and to go get it and wait in line if you're one of us, et cetera. They're going to be able to have access around that time. The key, and you hit it on the head, David, you don't have to play it all in Indianapolis if you delay this, and that will lead to more people being able to be in the stands, more money coming in. The question is, TV, does CBS and Turner, et cetera, can they, in the contract, will they, turn the screws to draw back some of the money? I'm not so sure. This is not like the college football playoff, which is a different animal. A lot of people are going, oh, you can kick this back to January or February. No, New Year's Day means something. New Year's Day means something in terms of viewership, in terms of tradition, and in terms of eyeballs and sales. I don't know if May, which is usually a dead sports period, except for the Indy 500, May is nothing special compared to March for the TV audience.
That's almost a non-issue because
I agree.
You get 67 games. Do you want them guaranteed, and do you want it in a format to where it's going to be played out without the threat of having to postpone or cancel?
And David, that's a great point because there are 67 games. There have been many, just a few weeks ago, we've had a lot of days where we've had 67 or so, in the 60s to 70s worth of games per day, and we're losing 5 to 10 of those games. You can't lose 5 to 10 NCAA tournament games.
No, you can't.
So any random sample of 67 games is seeing 10 games go away. That's not good news for the NCAA tournament. And Joby, on your point about the college football, I'm certainly hoping that we get all 3 playoff college football games in. If we end up losing a college football, one of the semifinals or the national championship game, where they have to somehow work out a delay because one of these teams has an outbreak, maybe that'll be the impetus that the NCAA needs to change college basketball and make this work too.
Well, I'm telling you right now, here's the impetus that could happen. Let's say the Big Ten, which has stricter protocols than a lot of the others, let's say either Northwestern or Ohio State can't play this weekend. Ohio State's out. They're out probably. 5-0 probably doesn't get you in. And if that happens, whoa, Katie bar the door. That's going to wake up a lot of eyeballs that will impact every sport.
I would enjoy it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're turning to a college football show here. We're really caught off topic. So let's kind of
basketball.
Yeah.
It will have a dramatic impact on basketball.
Okay. Well, on that note, though, let's go ahead and switch topics back over to basketball and go to what actually happened on the court. And we had a lot of games, a lot of interesting games, a lot of canceled games, unfortunately, as you know. But tonight I'm going to start things off actually in the Big 12 tonight, where we did have the Big East Big 12 Challenge wrap up. There were 10 games scheduled, 6 games played. It ended up being a 3-3 tie.
No, COVID won the challenge.
Yeah, three Big East, 3 Big 12, 4 COVID.
4 COVID.
But Tata, let me start with you with this Baylor team who is now sitting here at number 2 in the nation in both polls, 4-0. Did pick up a win over Stephen F. Austin this week.
Their metrics look fantastic. I had joked that SFA might go undefeated a couple weeks ago, and they lost by 31 to Baylor, so we see how good Baylor is. They start conference play this week by heading to Kansas State on Saturday, which is considered a cupcake, I would say at this point. And a
Yes.
couple non-conference cupcakes to finish out the month. 3-point shooting is amazing. 47% as a team, and great balanced scoring. 5 different guys scoring between 10 and 16 a game. Also, great out-of-state recruiting by Scott Drew. None of those 5 leading scorers grew up in Texas. He goes out of state to get his guys. And instant offense off the bench from the Presbyterian transfer Flagler. 12 threes in those 4 games.
47% from the beyond the – that's hard to do in warm-ups. Jeez.
And Stalika, the other real impressive team this week, I think, was West Virginia, taking care of what we thought was a pretty good Richmond team, taking care of them easily.
Well, Richmond, for all we know, still probably is going to be a pretty good team, but by the same token, trying to get into the top half of the Big 12 this year, because you got Baylor and Kansas are going to be at the top, but you're also going to have West Virginia, Texas Tech, and Texas all vying for seeds 3 through 5 right here.
Right. Joby, the other team definitely worth mentioning is Oklahoma State, 6-0 now. They are in red because of their postseason ban, which is under appeal. And actually, what I just did confirm was that if the appeal somehow is not heard before Selection Sunday, they will actually get to play this year in the postseason. But I assume they're going to decide it before the.
I would hope that they decide one way or another. Oklahoma State. I mean, they have really taken care of business. I mean, Wichita State game, showed, going on the road. It was a very solid win there. They are a tournament team right now, if they're allowed to be one. All you have to do is look at the metrics. They are playing solidly. They're undefeated, have played a decent schedule, and though it's the worst in the Big 12 according to this little thing, but they're producing. Cunningham is obviously the story from a player perspective, but they're playing well as a team. They're not this hodgepodge that I thought personally they would be, especially with the ban weighing over their entire season.
What is their ban for those of us that aren't paying attention?
It's 1 year. I mean,
the reason for it, like what are they trying?
And recruiting improprieties.
Okay.
I don't think they were caught up in the mess, in the FBI mess. It was just old fashioned, let's just put it this way, that there's some smoke. There was some fire with that smoke possibly. So it's interesting to see how this turns out. I would not want to predict one way or another.
I wouldn't either. I'm not going to.
I do want to give one quick shout out. If you watched our Under the Radar last week, we spoke a lot more about Kansas State and what they did against Fort Hays State, which was absolutely disgusting.
Yes.
Last Tuesday night, we actually focused on Fort Hays State's conference as our conference of the week, even. But this Kansas State team, this is going to be like playing non-D1 teams with the 2 games that each of these other teams in this conference get. And it's not going to help anybody's metrics, but
it's not going to help anyone catch up to K-State for the Stallings Award either.
They may have that wrapped up already for the worst power conference team in the nation. David, though, there's the upcoming schedule in this conference here. I know we mentioned a few of these games already.
Oklahoma State, another winnable game. As a fan, you kind of want to see them get that waiver. Oklahoma taking on Houston Baptist, a potential Centenary Award winner.
The big games, if they happen, Kansas, Texas Tech on Thursday, obviously.
Yeah.
And
that is
Oklahoma State, Texas game on Sunday.
Yeah, Kansas, they're only lost to Gonzaga. Everybody's losing to Gonzaga. Before we move on, real quick here, Chad, a quick note about Kansas. For those of you that might follow me and us on Twitter, no, Kansas did not actually retroactively self-impose a tournament ban for the 1920 tournament. That was a joke. Anyway.
Okay, let's jump over to the Big Ten Conference.
Out of curiosity, who sanctioned the tournament in 1920? Because it wouldn't have been the NCAA.
Yeah, I know.
It was Big Ten ACC Challenge Week. We got 11 out of the 11 games in. We actually are going to be getting one more game in. They just scheduled Louisville, Wisconsin. And come up this weekend here as well. So ACC will actually have a shot after losing 5 of the first 6 games to actually tie this event, amazingly. I don't think we're going to get a 13th game in, I think, or a 14th game in, but I think we'll get up to 11. But
you could get a 13th game in, Chad, just as a note. If you want me to seriously.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Joby.
Right now, Maryland, the Michigan State game at Maryland Michigan State has a bye afterwards. Likewise, Virginia, that game is supposed to be in Charlottesville, has a bye half week afterwards. There is talk of while Michigan State is in the region to just shoot down to Charlottesville, since both teams have that bye, have lost games to COVID, and actually do that. There is talk early stages of that game being rescheduled. Wouldn't be until late in the season, but it might be a necessary for Michigan State to wrap up a one in Virginia to strengthen their. I think the team might see the resumes, but it could be a situation where they want to do it.
Well, part of getting out to the 5-1 start, the Big Ten, though, on Tuesday, Ohio State winning at Notre Dame, for example. Titel, you want to hit a little Ohio State talk here?
So Joby was joking earlier about 5-0 Ohio State. My question, are you talking football or basketball? Because for the first time ever, we don't know.
Yeah.
No, the Buckeyes have looked good. 6-point win over Cleveland State on Sunday is a little too close for comfort, I think. But they start conference play this week. They head to Purdue on Wednesday. They squeeze in a non-conference game against a little team called North Carolina in Cleveland on Saturday. Getting it done at the line, 78% free throw shooting as a team. And the interior defense, only 39% from two-point range allowed to their opponents. The bad news, their leading scorer and rebounder, E.J. Liddell, out indefinitely with a illness. It's not COVID, thank God, but to step up and fill his shoes, they get Justin Ahrens, who I like to call the most one-dimensional player in the nation. The good news, he's 11 of 20 from behind the arc. The bad news, he's not even taken a free throw or a two-point field goal all season.
Wow.
David, how about Iowa? Very impressive over North Carolina. Crushed Northern Illinois over the weekend. Also beat Iowa State. So I made it.
Yeah. They're for real. They're ranked high, and they should be. I don't know if I think that they're quite number 3. I don't know that I think they'll end up on the 1 line, but right now it's hard to say that they're not worthy of that. I mean, I like them as much as anybody that I've seen out of this conference. You know, could they get a 1 seed? They might be able to. Illinois has had a couple stumbles. Now, I know that, like, Illinois has been lifting a lot of heavy weights, but so has Iowa, and Iowa's been able to get those wins.
I just scrolled the
Nca's
screen.
been humble for long enough here, but I think we have to discuss the other elephant in the room from tonight, and that was Rutgers not wasting time, getting a road win at Maryland.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that. Rutgers remaining undefeated in getting the road win, and I like this Rutgers team. I picked them to go to the Final Four, and I think they can.
I'll tell you what, Geo Baker was back tonight, came off the bench, but he looked really good. He looks like he's fully recovered from his ankle injury. Miles Johnson has become a monster with Omuri being his backup. I mean, they've got the pieces down low. Ron Harper is just a complete stud. I'm loving this Rutgers team. It's my team, so I've never known what this feels like before. So,
this was after Maryland
I'm in a whole new
come
world
back
here.
in the first half to tie the game and actually take, I think it was a 1-point lead at halftime, but
yeah, the second half, Rutgers pretty much rolled this game, and plus after beating Syracuse on for the first time in forever, they were former conference mates. Back on
Syracuse. They're a little better than what we thought. At first, I was kind of disappointed in Rutgers, but holy cow!
We're still in the Big Ten, though, Dave. We'll get to Syracuse in a moment in terms of that. But
I meant that in connection to Rutgers.
Here is the upcoming schedule. I don't believe that Louisville game that we mentioned, the Louisville-Wisconsin game, is on there. It is not, but actually, Joby, Wisconsin with an interesting week, though, with a tough Loyola Chicago team coming up tomorrow night. Also.
Yeah, Loyola Chicago, I mean, the MVC has had a few teams pop out, and Loyola Chicago is certainly one of them. Loyola Chicago preseason was supposed to be, along with Northern Iowa, the class of the field. Northern Iowa is not. But Loyola Chicago should be able to give Wisconsin. Wisconsin's one of these teams, as we all know, that they take care of business. They've done for the most part, except for that Marquette loss, which was a last-second loss. They're the type who take care of business, but they don't run away from it. And so that leaves them open to a high-flying, especially an under-the-radar conference team like Loyola Chicago. I'm not saying that Wisconsin is going to lose, but Wisconsin better bring not just their B game. They better be on it that night, or they.
I like Loyola Chicago, but I think Wisconsin's way over there.
We've got some real interesting games that
we do.
cover this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Ohio State, North Carolina is part of the CBS Sports Classic. We got the Crossroads Classic games there. But how about number 1 versus number 3 in the nation with Iowa, Gonzaga, if it happens on Saturday?
It'll be great. I mean, you got Garza and company against a team that is ranked number 1 and deservedly so. Still not sold on Gonzaga's offense. They give up 90 to Kansas, but they have so many weapons that even if Garza scores 40, they still might be able to score 100 as a team and win.
Yeah, and then Sunday, circle that Illinois-Rutgers game. That's
yes,
be a real
that
good
is
one.
Yeah, 2 top 20 teams there. When was the last time that happened?
When was the last time you said circle Illinois-Rutgers on your calendar? Never. Okay.
Yeah.
The answer is never. Let's jump over to the ACC, the other half of that ACC Big Ten Challenge. And Stalika, one of the pieces of news out of the ACC off the court was Duke deciding to cancel the rest of their non-conference schedule because of COVID, which means they canceled all of one game.
Well, in and of itself, we wouldn't be talking about this as much, but considering this was off the heels of a blowout loss at home to Illinois where Krzyzewski wanted to talk about anything but the game, I mean, you could see where people were going to be frowning on Duke a little bit, and we'll get to this later. Kentucky did not quite have the same approach after they were getting trashed at home by Notre Dame before mounting a late comeback that did not ended up coming to fruition.
Oh, my back. Oh, my back.
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm one of the greatest coaches, a Mount Rushmore coach, but please don't lionize me.
I'm not going to fault the guy for trying to do what was safe. But, I did find it strange that they did consider actually canceling the Michigan State and Illinois games a week after they were played just to be
a couple of teams. David, talk a little bit about this Clemson team. Nice win over Maryland. Follow that up with a win over Alabama. They're now 5-0. And in the
pull
top
them up
25.
here, Chad. Cracking the top 25 today. Let's pull up their profile because while they don't have any protected seed caliber wins, they have a lot of decent wins, and they've looked really good. A really good half-court defensive team.
Their profile's coming. It's loaded. So there it is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There we go. But, Purdue, maybe a tournament team. Maryland, maybe a tournament team. Alabama, probably a tournament team. Mississippi State, probably an SEC tournament team, maybe. But again, it isn't that they have knocked off any heavyweights, but they've been playing decent teams and looking really good against them.
All of them are double-digit wins except for Alabama, and that was Alabama, by the way, getting some late points. So they were up by double digits.
Just as a side note for those new to the show, on these team sheets, they're separated just like the NCAA team sheets are by tiers. NCAA team sheet separates things out by their net rating. There is no net rating yet. I'm kind of fudging a bit. We're using KenPom ratings instead of net ratings to separate out the team sheets here for the.
But it's kind of good. You can use the J&G. You can use anything.
I could.
Very, very good. Little tool here. Yeah. I was using it today when I was putting the bracket together.
Titel, how about Louisville also undefeated now at 4-0?
Quiet 4-0, I would say. They destroyed a good Western Kentucky team by 21 last week. Surprised me. I thought it was going to be much closer. We mentioned the rescheduled game at Wisconsin on Saturday. Then they start conference play by heading to Pitt next week. They're getting it done by defense. They're holding opponents to only 27% from behind the arc. So the defense, as usual, is solid. They also have a great transfer in Radford point guard Carlick Jones. He looked amazing. 17 points, 7 boards, 5 assists a game. And he's the only senior. Every other player who's contributed this year, freshman or sophomore. So they have the experienced point guard and tons of youth around him.
They're also in the top 25 there. Joby, Miami, a nice home win over Purdue. And so we start thinking, is Miami any good? And then they lose at home to Florida Gulf Coast.
This is actually, they had no business with Chris Likes being out of the game. Likes is the key to their team. And when you're talking MVP in the purest sense of the word, value to a team, Chris Likes very well may be that in the entire conference. his value to Miami. You saw a rallying cry, and maybe at the quote that I think offline one of you guys said, Chad, was, well, maybe Purdue's not that good, and maybe they're not. But that was an impressive coming together to beat Purdue. But then I think we saw what Miami's supposed to be without Chris Likes. Plain and simple. Gulf Coast is for their level decent, but Miami should take care of that, no problem. The fact about
they're not going to win the ACC.
I disagree that they're bad. They're a 150 team. They're an upper half of the NCAA as a whole team, but that means you're not supposed to beat an ACC team, especially one that has aspirations like Miami does. And Miami, if Chris, depending on how Chris Likes' health is, that's going to play a huge role for Miami going forward.
There's the upcoming schedule for the week. Speaking of going forward, Virginia, are they playing now, Joby? Are they out for this?
No, they're not playing against Wake. But
the big game is Villanova on Saturday.
The Villanova game, as of this moment, is on.
Stalika has circled Clemson, South Carolina. South Carolina just got shut down today because of COVID. I'm pretty certain that game has already been canceled, or if not, it may not happen. So, big game if it happens.
Yeah, big game.
Would be a trap game for Clemson in a rivalry setting.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a pretty big rivalry. I don't know if they'd overlook that one.
Yeah. Let's jump over to why don't we go over to the Big East next? I don't know where else to go. I'm just kind of randomly selecting conferences at this point. But Titel, let me start with you over the Big East, where we've got a couple undefeated teams left. A DePaul team who just got shut down for, I think, the third time because of COVID again today.
Still has not played.
But I know you were talking a little UConn. How about them?
Talk about a well-rested team. They haven't played since December 3rd. They're not scheduled to play until Creighton heads east to UConn on Sunday. The sophomore James Bouknight has been better than advertised. He was good as a freshman. He has made the leap to great as a sophomore, 19.6 boards a game. Their team is averaging 7 blocks a game, number 1 in the nation. How come? 5 different guys on the roster who are 6'9" or taller. So they get it done with Bouknight scoring and everybody else blocking shots.
Stalika, your Xavier team, 7-0. I thought that might be the best record in the country, at least tied for it.
I think if you're Oklahoma, you've got to be scratching your head in your last 3 games against Big East teams. You get shellacked by Villanova in a Final Four setting. You lose at Creighton last year, and you're thinking, okay, here's a Xavier team that normally doesn't shoot well from behind the arc. So naturally, the Musketeers set a school record by hitting 19 against the Sooners.
Wow. Yeah, real impressive there. David, I'm also, despite actually going 1-1 this week, Creighton, I thought looked pretty good with, losing by 1 point to Kansas and then beating
extremely good. Yeah. And again, Nebraska, not exactly a whole lot to get too excited about there. They just haven't been good since Tim Miles left. To go in the crate, to go up against a team like Kansas, I know that there were no fans there, but I was as impressed by that as anything. After they lost the game, the thing about playing a great game or in a great game is that you can play great and still lose. I think that's what happened to Creighton. But at the end of that game, despite the loss, I'm like, this team's ranked 9th, and they should be. What a performance. And this is – you don't really think of Creighton as a blue blood. It's been forever since they've been past the round of 32. I don't think they've been past the round of 32 since the NCAA went to the 64-team format. But if you look at what they did last year, especially in the second half of last year, and what they've done this year, when you look at that overall body of work, this is a team that's as good as anybody in the country.
They really are looking good. They've got a game at St. John's, who looked very bad, Joby. Losing to a bad Georgetown team.
Yeah, well, that was a fun game.
It was. But,
it was a very overtime, etc. But it was, it was. FS1 was very thankful since the next game was COVIDed. That was supposed to take over from the Pac-12. But St. John's. Champagne has not done what I thought he would do. I thought he'd be a strong high double-digit scorer, and he's just not, and be able to be that go-to that they're kind of been used to. That's what St. John's has kind of fallen into rhythm of, but that has not happened. The Johnnies, that position where they hold, if DePaul never plays another game, the Johnnies might hold that 11th spot for a really long time.
Yeah. Looking ahead there, this is could be a real fun week if these games get played. A really interesting week for Seton Hall if they get their games, but I think they're already being crossed off here by Salika. Those games are off already.
Yep, because Xavier had to hit the pause button because one of their, I guess, staff members or players actually tested positive for COVID. And
Still?
Okay,
I thought they were coming out of that.
Xavier back up pause. Seton Hall still with an interesting week, though, with a game at Marquette and a game against Providence coming up. So they would have had a 3-game week, still have a 2-game week. So we'll see how things play out there.
As far as Xavier is concerned, I think their next game that they're going to try to get in is going to be against a Marquette, which would be their Big East opener at home.
That's a Sunday game, yeah. All right, let's jump over to the SEC now, where we already discussed what's going on with Florida at the top of the show. Let's talk about some of these other teams here. And Titel, why don't we start with a Tennessee team that finally got underway and has looked pretty good in their first 2 games.
The only team more rested than UConn is probably Tennessee.
DePaul.
They did pick up not just only 2 games so far, but very impressive. Top 75 wins over Colorado and Cincinnati. Good news, they have 4 home cupcakes ahead before a very dangerous conference opener at Missouri on December 30th. So I hope they're focused on that one. The team's great at the line. Obviously, 2 games is a small sample size, but 80% is great free throw shooting. So they got John Fulkerson, their senior, leading the way with 13 points a game. None of the next top 5 scorers are seniors. So again, much like the other team we mentioned earlier, the senior leading the way, like Louisville, and then a bunch of non-seniors behind them.
There are only 2 top 25 rated teams. Salika's highlighted in there, but David, I know you want to talk about the other one. 16 and 18, the polls out of nowhere, the Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, really out of nowhere. This is a team that we didn't think was going to be good at all, even within the SEC. And you look at what they've done. They've beaten Oregon. They beat Illinois in their rivalry game over the weekend. That's a hell of a resume. It's as good as any of them. I think it's one of the bigger stories and it's one of the surprise stories and one of the bigger stories in college basketball this year. And Quanzo Martin doing a hell of a job. Mizzou is back. The other thing that's frustrating, and I wrote a little bit about this, you ended up deleting it all, was that this past Saturday was supposed to be the day we resumed the border war.
Buzzer is not working.
Yeah.
Joey, go ahead.
And, you mentioned the wins. Liberty's a good win right now.
Liberty's a real good win.
Yeah, and Missouri, the SEC as a whole should be thankful that this Missouri team has come out of nowhere. Just look at the awful metrics of what everybody else is beyond Tennessee. It's really bad. I mean, they have underperformed, led by Auburn and just some of these other teams which have been utterly disappointing. And I will defer because that leads, I think, a segue to someone who wants to talk about the last place team, I'm sure.
Why don't you talk about the last place team? Well, Salika, you want to talk about them?
I mean, I suppose we could talk about Kentucky scoring the first 4 points against Notre Dame and then summarily giving up, I think it was a 29-point run against Notre Dame at home. So if you're
Notre Dame, this is not, the very good top of the ACC. This is
28 points because you're having to dig your way out of a 24-point hole in the first half. And granted, they got 23 of those points, but
hey, they almost came back. They almost made it.
Hit the game-winning shot.
No, but we're there here with this crazy SEC standings. Arkansas 6-0, and getting some top 25 love, but they paid nobody.
They've played nobody. That is
schedule. And I remind you, when we talk about strength of schedule, there are about 30 to 40 teams. They're about, that's 288 out of like 320. Yeah, not out of 357. It's out of 315. So it's one of the very, very bottom.
I'll tell you, if I was selecting the NCAA tournament field right now, I'd have 3 teams in Missouri, Tennessee, and Florida. I don't think I'd give another bid to this conference right now.
No.
I just don't see it. I mean, I guess you could make a case for LSU. I'm not there yet on them.
Well, you got to do something other than win home bye games. That's pretty much other than those three, all that's happened.
Here, David, here's the upcoming schedule in the SEC.
Oh, look, games.
Bye games. That Detroit-Kentucky game is already off. I know there's more games that are off. Ole Miss is winning as we record this, but Clemson, South Carolina is off. Kentucky, UCLA, I guess, on Saturday. That might be this highlight games, and Kentucky's probably going to get blown out.
There is a good one tomorrow, Chad, and it's really important to both teams, this Furman, Alabama game. It's kind of bubblicious on both ends.
I would also keep an eye on Ole Miss and Middle Tennessee Wednesday, because this was actually, I think, a clause in Kermit Davis's contract where you would have to make at least one return game to.
Oh, no, so nice of him to do it when no one can be there.
Well, Wofford, A&M's interesting. Not that, Wofford gave a little bit of a run to Richmond, and we'll see if, we'll see how they do against a Power 5. It could be an upset in the making.
Let's jump over to the Pac-12, though, which is down to only 2 undefeated teams left. But Mr. Titell, your school is one of those 2.
Welcome aboard, Rutgers. This is how we do it.
We're 5-0 brothers.
Obviously, an 8-point win over UTEP on Saturday does not give me a ton of hope, but we have a home cupcake coming up and then a hell of a conference opener at Stanford on Saturday. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. The 3-point defense, amazing. Only 26% allowed from behind the arc. Very good balanced scoring. 4 different guys scoring between 10 and 15. And much like Scott Drew at Baylor, great out-of-state recruiting. All 5 of their top 5 scorers are from outside Arizona. California, Canada, and Lithuania.
Wow. And Titell, I do have a question, though. Can the basketball team hold the Sun Devils below the margin? Not just the amount the Sun Devils football team put up, but the margin.
Better.
Well, David, why don't we talk a little Sun Devils hoops, because they did not look very good against San Diego State, and they almost lost to Grand Canyon.
Yeah, well, San Diego State, a really good team. Grand Canyon, perhaps a decent under-the-radar team. I mean, good by under-the-radar standards. But no, not looking anywhere close to a top 25 team really in either one of those games. I still think their ceiling's high. Most of the time they kind of come out real big and strong in November and December, and then kind of taper off and then kind of sneak into the play-in game after getting into the top 5. COVID has them turned around. Maybe they start off kind of slow and then take this, conference by storm later on. I don't know. But I like what this UCLA team has done. I think people are kind of writing them off pretty quickly. Their only loss also to a really good San Diego State team, 5-1 on the year with some decent wins.
The Marquette win was very nice this week.
Yeah, the Marquette win was nice. And when you go back and you look at how strong they were down the stretch last year and that they're 5-1 this year, how is it that you can win that many games in a power conference and still be under the radar? I don't know why people aren't paying more attention to them.
Yeah, no, I like them. Stalika, though, Oregon, a head scratcher. I mean, this Washington team has not looked good at all, and they struggled to beat them this weekend.
Well, they struggle to beat them, but I think more noteworthy is their neighbors down in Oregon State losing at home to Portland.
Losing at home to Portland. And Joby, when I look at this conference, look at that. They don't have anybody making the top 30. I guess Oregon 30 to the coaches poll. No top 25 teams here. And I mean, is Washington State our best team in the conference? Maybe them in Arizona. Who knows? They're 5-0. They're undefeated.
They already hit the best team in UCLA. UCLA is not getting. I mean, this is UCLA has no history. Obviously, no.
Yeah, no history. I mean, the voters just can't wrap their brains around that.
They're UCLA's a solid. They're not a protected seed level though, but they're UCLA is going to be in the tournament as an at-large level team. But yeah, the rest of the conference with Arizona State struggling beyond what we thought. Colorado's been which we thought they could maybe make a run. It's not been a good preseason for the Pac-12.
Utah got crushed by BYU in the Holy War. It wasn't even close.
It was a bad margin.
Yeah, the fans that weren't there missed a horrible game.
And what's happens, and Stalika's point on Oregon State is very prescient, because when you have Oregon State and Washington doing just god-awful things out of conference, it hurts the whole conference. I will give Cal credit. They did what Virginia couldn't and actually hit the three-pointer at the buzzer against San Francisco.
How did they do that?
I actually am surprised the Dons couldn't put them away, because Cal's not that great. But this conference, the bad's going to really bring down a lot of teams that are going to try to vie for the bubble, and it's not shaping up to their advantage right now.
Right. There you see the upcoming schedule. There's nothing other than the UCLA Kentucky game we already mentioned. There's nothing really worth watching this week on this conference.
Yeah.
I don't really think.
USC San Fran, I'll tune into that. Arizona Stanford, I'll tune into that.
You'll watch the Omaha Colorado game too, David.
Probably.
And you'll watch the Idaho Utah game, and you'll watch the.
No, I don't even think I'll watch Idaho Utah. I did watch the Idaho Wazoo game.
Or we need our colleague Lee Del Vecchio to get us to sign up for the Pac-12 network.
Yeah.
Stalika
wants you to sign up for the Pac-12 network. They not until a particular four-letter company buys them.
Well, here's the West Coast Conference. Obviously, Gonzaga not playing.
Santa Clara ahead of Gonzaga. How about that?
How about that? We mentioned already BYU's winning the Holy War, but Titel, you want to talk about somebody else in this conference?
We talked about Portland a little with their win over Oregon State, but I want to analyze this a little bit. So Portland's 4-1. Their only loss so far, horrible loss, home to Seattle by double digits, but it was the season opener. Keep in mind, this is a team that lost 20 of its final 21 games last year. They were trailing the Beavers on the road last Thursday by 8 with under 6 to go. They still ended up coming back and winning in overtime. Very impressive win. Couple cupcakes ahead, then a home rematch with Seattle twice in a month-long period. Amazing. Then they finished December with that game, and then they start conference play in early January. So they have a 5'11" transfer from, ironically, Washington State, Ahmed Ali. He's looked amazing on offense, 21 points a game. If 5'11" is too big, then Coach Terry Porter can sub in his backup, a 5'7" point guard named Chase Adams. The good news schedule-wise, they're only scheduled to play the Zags and BYU and St. Mary's once each this year. So we think this means that they have a decent chance of getting a top 4 seed in the conference tourney, maybe?
It could. It is a ladder format still, assuming that the West Coast Conference tournament even gets played as any conference tournament. So it still would be that they'd have to go through the top 2 teams in all likelihood to get there.
If you are the 4 seed, you get, with beating the team that comes to you, you get the great pleasure of getting curb stomped in your next one by the Zags.
You end up getting the Zags in the semifinal. Maybe you want to be the 3 seed, not the 4, and
Right.
That means you got to get above everybody but Gonzaga and BYU. Stalika, there's the upcoming schedule. I think you got to circle this Friday night game, also the BYU San Diego State game.
Oh,
that's going to be the main one to watch. But
Well, the Gonzaga Iowa game's
me, I'm going to highlight St. Catherine because this is yet another non-D1 team that's played more games than DePaul.
You can circle also Albertson College, which is Albertson College of Idaho. They go by both Albertson or College of Idaho. They've played, I think, every Northwest team so far this season as well. So if we want to go not D1 information here, but
it's a big pain, Chad. They have a ton of people to choose from.
Let's jump all the way over to the American Conference. Let's head from the West Coast all the way back. Well, to the conference that stretches from Texas to the east, I guess. But David, was a pretty good game, pretty good conference going this week until we got to the Saturday games.
Again, Cincinnati, they've lost 2 of their last 3, but they've played really well in all 3 games. They were wire to wire with Xavier. Xavier not getting control of that one until the very end. This Tennessee team, it was a similar story. Like at the under 4 timeout, they were right in there. Eventually you need the credentials on your paper. You have to get the W's, but I think Cincinnati a lot better than what a lot of us were anticipating.
I gotta say also though, Houston now 4-0, top 10, didn't play this week, but the other team that I guess also didn't play this week was the other team that got votes though. SMU. Titel, you have some thoughts on another team that didn't play?
All my teams tonight are well-rested teams like UConn
Yes.
and Tennessee, I'm telling you. 4-0, a 2-point win at Dayton 2 weekends ago. They ease into conference play with ECU, and then after surviving that 40 minutes, they get 2 weeks off. And then the first week of January looks brutal. Houston and Cincinnati coming to Dallas back-to-back. They're getting it done at the line, 82% as a team from the free throw line. And unlike those inexperienced teams we talked about, like Tennessee and UConn, or excuse me, Tennessee and Louisville, very experienced team in SMU. They get 7 of their top 8 scorers are either juniors or seniors. One of them, junior point guard Kendrick Davis. He's playing like an All-American, 21 points, 8 assists a game, 19 of 20 at the free throw line.
Yeah.
And
Joby,
we just need to mention that Memphis just
that's where I was
totally
going to go.
peed themselves. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I was gonna ask Joby about that exact Memphis team that we like so much ahead of the season and looked so bad.
Auburn Memphis game was it was basically 2 drunks holding each other up by using their own body weight. It's just an awful display of basketball.
Salika, should we give some? Go ahead.
In the trash. So.
Yeah, Salika, should we finally give a shout out to Temple, who might actually finally get a game in this coming weekend?
Against the original team of the people, the New Jersey Institute of Technology.
A very well-rested Temple team. Very, very well-rested.
NGIT is also well-rested.
Let's talk about the Atlantic 10 Conference next. And
oh, boy. Oh, dear.
Okay, David's making noises over there, but we mentioned already the West Virginia Richmond game. But let me start off with Dayton. Actually,
Fordham continuing to move up the rankings.
Fordham number 2 in the standings. Yes.
Yeah.
Titel, what about this Dayton team coming off a win over Northern Kentucky this week? And Mississippi State.
The only reason that they're not undefeated is because they lost by 2 points to SMU after blowing a 10-point second-half lead. A really good chance have a quality win that blew up in their faces. All 4 of their games have been decided by a combined 14 points, including a 3-point double overtime win over Mississippi State on Saturday in Atlanta. They figured as long as we're playing Mississippi State, we'll keep going through the Magnolia State. So they host Mississippi on Saturday. Helps that their opponents are only shooting 58% from the line. Talk about senior backcourts. I will put Ibby Watson and Jalen Crutcher up against any senior backcourt in the nation. Combined 36 points, 9 boards, 8 assists a game. Fantastic.
Richmond, Stalika did lose the game to West Virginia, but I don't think I'd knock them any for that. They are still in the top 25 in one of the 2 polls.
Not when you're losing to a team that's a top 10 caliber like West Virginia is right now, and especially since they put away what we thought was a decent Northern Iowa team. And then again, you're starting to wonder just how big was their win in Kentucky looking. I mean, granted, it's early, but I would still be high on the Spiders here.
Yeah, the Northern Iowa team that suffered a lot of injuries and actually also shut down their program until the conference play. So
if preseason you had said to somebody, you said, hey, you're going to play West Virginia, Northern Iowa, Wofford, Kentucky, and Morehead State. And your strength of schedule would be one of the worst in the country. I mean, that would boggle your mind. I mean, they're 263, as you can see by Fordham and St. Bonaventure. We only go up to 315. I mean, that is, I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, so some interesting games, a couple of interesting games coming up. Dave, first of all, tomorrow night, finally, I think St. Bonaventure finally gets to play a game. They're going to Cleveland to play Akron. And also, Titel already mentioned the Ole Miss Dayton game, but also coming up Sunday, how about that St. Louis Minnesota game?
That's a big one. And again, it's a chance for St. Louis to get another notable win. Many, I think, undefeated, but for the most part, untested. And it's a good game for many as well. Again, it sort of has a bubble-licious feel to it. It's 2 teams that really need some meat on their resumes. And I know St. Louis beat LSU already, but they need to do more than just that. And so it's a good opportunity for both teams.
Step over to our final conference. It's going to be the Mountain West. Maybe our final conference throughout the season here, although Salika, the San Diego State team, is 5-0, is ranked in the top 20 in both polls, and it is still looking really good, as we mentioned already with our Arizona State win.
Well, this was a team, again, that also beat UCLA early in the year. And if you watch the second half of that game where San Diego State and Arizona State were kind of going back and forth, the Aztecs were gradually pulling away and looked very much like a dominant team if you think about it.
The team that had the big week, though, I know, Title, you want to talk about them. Boise State, off of an early season loss, had a very nice week this week.
Rough opening game to start the season last month for Boise. They lost at Houston. Their leading scorer, Derek Alston, scoreless in 32 minutes. I still don't know how that's possible. They bounced back. They had a 4-point win at BYU last Wednesday. That should look nice in a couple of months. They start conference play next week with 2 games against New Mexico and against New Mexico again. Great 3-point defense, only 26% allowed from behind the arc. The bad news, they finished the regular season in this Mountain West where they have 2 games against the same opponent and then 2 against the same opponent. They have 4 games against Utah State and San Diego State to finish the regular season. The good news, they have 16 winnable games before then against teams that are outside the top 100 over the next 2 months. The medium news, Marcus Shaver's still out with a foot injury. If he cannot return later this month, they're not going to win all 16 of those games.
We need to check the bylaws here, but doesn't Boise State have to begin the tournament in Dayton? Should they go?
This San Diego State team, you realize that going back to last year, they are 34-2 in their last 36 games. One of those losses at the buzzer to Utah State, and that they've beaten 5 ranked teams. I mean, that is, again, I guess because they're on the left coast and they play late and they don't play in the best conference. I don't think people that watch this show realize it, because
look their top. Look where they are in the top 25 polls. I think that's right where they belong.
Yeah, this is a good program.
Hey, Chad, I want to point out, as we look up at the past week's results, Utah State beat Albertson College again.
Yes.
Boise, you know what got them off the schneid after that loss to Houston? A win over Albertson College. How many teams is Albertson College?
Albertson College, Transylvania. Yeah, come on.
Is this a real school, or is this another open Bible?
I mean, my goodness.
I believe that Colorado State, as we're recording this, is finally playing their first game tonight. Unless that game got canceled, I don't actually have a score update.
We've got a Front Range game tonight.
And then they're at St. Mary's. But the big game, we mentioned the BYU San Diego State game earlier. That is the big game for this conference as well, coming up this week. A really fun game. I think we're going to have Friday night, assuming it happens. And as we mentioned all season, take all these upcoming games with a grain of salt, because who knows with this season.
Colorado State, Chad, with a 39-point whooping of Northern Arizona.
There we go. Colorado State. They were very well rested, were they not, Ty-Ty?
It was only a 3-point game at the half, and then all of a sudden a 50-20 explosion did it for them.
On that note, though, let me go ahead and pull this down. Let's move over to any other final thoughts. And Stalika, let me start with you this week.
We're going to go back to the Rutgers-Maryland game because they had a nice little fun fact on TV. This was the first time since 1935 that Rutgers had won their first 5 games of the year by double digits. Couldn't Rutgers have picked like a happier time on both occasions to come out to such a fast start?
I'm happy.
I don't know how many people were happy during the Depression, though.
Titel.
So my final thought is going to be about little brotherly love. So I was trying to figure out the best brother duo in the history of college basketball. Some people might say the O'Bannons, who won the 1995 NCAA title at UCLA together. Some might say the Morris twins, Markieff and Marcus. They were both lottery picks in 2011. I'm starting to lean towards the Champagny brothers. So you got Julian averaging 21 and 8 for St. John's. He's the top scorer in the whole Big East. His brother Justin is over at Pitt, averaging 19 points and 13 boards a game. Both of those top 3 in the ACC, back-to-back games of 20 points and 20 boards a game. That doesn't happen once in a good player's lifetime. He just did it twice in back-to-back games.
Well, on top of that, Titel, if you combine the wins that each team is going to get this year, you might get close to a tournament, enough wins to make the NCAA tournament. combined. But
Individual success.
Joby.
Well, we last week I pointed out that a lot of these interconference fights that COVID definitely affected, whether it was the Big East and the Big 12, the ACC Big 10 challenges would go a long way. And since both of those played out to pretty much draws, you would think, okay, it didn't hurt one conference or another. In the ACC Big 10, I would point out the teams that won from the Big 10 were typically over the ACC teams that likely have NCAA aspirations. The Big 10, even though the final score was only 6-5, the Big 10, I think, got a big advantage because they were able to have their teams that have those dreams come away with good wins. Duke is probably still going to be a very good win down the stretch, for Illinois. North Carolina is going to be a very good win for Iowa down the stretch. So these key wins at the top, I think the Big 10 was more than just a 6-5 winner. I think it will have a very good effect for their conference and their conference strength with, once again, this being the year where out-of-conference games are at a premium.
Absolutely. David, you want to finish out the show for us?
I'm really hoping that we get the Gonzaga-Iowa game, and I'm hoping that we can get the Gonzaga-Baylor game rescheduled. If there's one thing I think Gonzaga needs to do, it's beef up they're playing a tougher schedule than what Long Beach State typically plays. Wow. So there's that. But then again, is the screen share ready to go?
It's all yours.
It's time for the hottest thing on the internet. It's sweeping the nation by storm. It is David's hot take.
Didn't we cancel this last week? I thought
I don't believe so.
We tried.
Yes.
I think we can end the show right now because he can't get his screen share to work.
That might, very, very, very likely. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay, I've got too many things up here. All right. And now it's pinwheeling. Okay, is it on the screen? There it is.
Starbucks ad. Is it Starbucks coffee?
Yeah. I want a shot and a beer and another shot. That is this week's hot take.
It's not Starbucks coffee.
There it is, tweeted out.
Okay.
And it's Starbucks coffee.
All right. Okay. And another post in the middle there too. I guess I don't even know what to say to that other than on behalf of Joby Fordson, David Griggs, John Titel, John Salika, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back Wednesday night with another Under the Radar and next Monday with another Hoops HD report. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
We're still recording.
We're still recording.
We're still recording, Chad.
And we are still recording. Oh, there we go. Now.